What's good, YouTube? Welcome back. Today it is Lazy Daze Tubby, and I'm back at it again with some more history reaction for you guys today on my solo channel. And we are doing Caesar, the Gallic Wars and Civil War series. We're on part 3 today. I'm really enjoying this journey and finding out what Kings and Generals have got for me, and telling this story in general. So if you haven't already, please head over to their page. A link is in the description box down below. If you guys are enjoying my content and enjoying this journey of me finding out more about this series, then please like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. But we are just going to jump straight into this one.
The Belgae were a loose collection of various tribes, and had fought constant wars with the Germanic tribes across the Rhine, which had fostered a strong and experienced warrior culture. They knew of how successful Caesar had been in Gaul already, and were justifiably suspicious of his intentions.
Understandably
To counter
so.
the rising Roman threat, the Belgae formed a confederation, led by King Galba of the Suessiones. Labienus sent word of this coalition to Caesar in Cisalpine Gaul, who immediately took action. Caesar raised a further 2 legions and moved straight to the Belgae border. It is worth noting that Caesar now had 8 legions under his command, approximately 44,000 men including auxiliaries, double the amount he had initially.
I thought you were limited to the amount of legions you could have control over in the Roman Empire.
Been allocated by the Senate. Furthermore, while the Belgae raising an army could certainly be seen as a potential threat, Caesar made no efforts to get the casus bellus he had when fighting the Helvetii and Suebi. The Republic had less and less control over Caesar, and many in Rome were beginning to talk about these conquests not being in Rome's best interest, but in Caesar's. Nevertheless, Caesar marched his legions quickly into the territory of the nearest Belgic tribe, the Remi, who were completely taken aback by the speed at which the Romans had been able to mobilize, and surrendered instantly, swearing to Caesar that they had never been a part.
So I understand why they would have surrendered, because obviously, you know, you just don't want to have the loss of life, especially with 8 legions, 44,000 men, fully trained. That would be scary, seeing just coming into your village. There's not much you can do.
Of the Confederation. The Remi even provided Caesar with all the information they had on the alliance, including which tribes were involved, how many men each tribe was contributing, and that they were currently marching towards the Remi's territory. With this information, Caesar convinced his Gallic allies, the Aedui, led now by Divitiacus, to invade the lands of the Bellovaci, a powerful Belgae tribe, to open a second front, while he marched towards the Belgic Alliance's
smart
main
by
army.
Caesar. Literally, you're giving them a nearly impossible situation. They now have to deal with two fronts. It's just so much more difficult. Smart move by Caesar.
Caesar crossed a bridge over the Axona River and encamped in a strong position on a hill on the other side.
Okay.
The river provided protection from the rear, and marshy land at his front made a frontal assault difficult. Furthermore, Caesar had learned his lesson from fighting Ariovistus, and left 6 cohorts in a well-fortified position on the other side of the bridge, securing his supply line. With no chance of being starved out from his position, Caesar waited for the Belgae to make their move. Meanwhile, the Belgae had marched to the Remi town of Bibrax, just 8 miles from where Caesar was encamped, and besieged it. Caesar gives the total number of the Confederation as 300,000. However, it is unclear how much this number is exaggerated, and how many of these men were currently in the army. A more realistic estimation would be somewhere around 80,000 men, still a force to be reckoned with,
still
almost
double
that of Caesar's. In the face of such a large force, the Remi sent messages to Caesar saying that they would be unable to hold the town without his help. Caesar, however, was reluctant to give up his defensive position, as he thought that the attack on Bibrax was a trap designed to force him to do that. Instead, he kept his legions in camp, but sent a substantial contingent of auxiliaries, composed mainly of Cretan archers and Balearic slingers, to sneak into Bibrax to help the Remi. With Bibrax thus reinforced, and Caesar not taking the bait, Galba instead marched his army to meet the Romans, encamping just 2 miles from the Roman camp.
But he's in the marshy
Caesar
area
was reluctant to engage Galba straight away, and instead focused on cavalry skirmishes to test the strength of the Belgae. While this was going on, he further reinforced his position, digging long trenches and constructing defensive towers on the flanks of his position.
No way! A good defense is
Realizing
good
that
offense.
attacking such a strong position would be suicidal, Galba instead sent roughly 15 to 20,000 men to ford the river and attack the 6 cohorts on the other side, hoping either to draw Caesar from the hill or to cut off his supply line and starve him out. Seeing this, Caesar gathered all his light infantry and cavalry and marched quickly to oppose the crossing, leaving his legions in their defensive position. The Roman cavalry arrived just in time and fell upon the few Belgae who had made it to the other bank, killing many and forcing them back into the river. At the same time, the Roman missile troops peppered the Belgae still in the water with stones, javelins, and arrows. They doggedly tried to continue their crossing despite taking heavy casualties, but Galba had no choice but to pull his men back. To make matters worse, word had now reached him that the Aedui were rampaging through the Belgae lands. With the Romans to his front so heavily dug in, and with another army now threatening his flank, Galba decided to withdraw. The tribes would all disperse to their respective homelands, but all agreed to reassemble if the Romans marched further into Belgae lands. As the Confederation's army dispersed, Caesar cautiously pursued with his cavalry and 3 legions under Labienus, harassing the Belgae. Due to their lack of coordination, the Belgae suffered heavy casualties in this retreat. The battle had cost the Confederation approximately 10,000 men and had forced the tribes to divide, making them easier for Caesar to conquer. Many tribes simply surrendered in the face of the Roman legions, including the Belgae and Galba's Suessiones.
Wow, their only chance, and
However,
he
deeper
got rid of
in
it there.
Belgae territory, the Nervii did have the time to organize and were not going to give up so easily. They were outraged by Caesar's foray into Belgae territory, and alongside their neighbours, the Virumandui, Atrebates, and Aduatuci, were able to gather an army of approximately 50,000 men, led by the Nervii king, Bodugnatus.
Alright, what's he going to do in this battle?
Caesar, hearing that this force was gathering against him, marched for the river Sabis on the edge of Nervii territory. Bodugnatus had learned the lesson from Galba and knew that he could not allow the Romans the chance to fortify their position, and so he positioned his men in ambush on a hill on the other side of the river. He also had his troops construct hedge-like obstructions, which were placed on the other side of the river to disrupt the Roman formations and cavalry. Caesar marched his army in 2 groups. His veteran 6 legions, who marched in the front, were the first to reach the river, and began constructing a camp on the hill, with the river in front, while the 2 newer legions marched behind, with the baggage train. Caesar sent his cavalry and light infantry across the river, which was only 3 feet deep, in order to scout the opposite bank. They were met by some Nervii cavalry, and a brief skirmish broke out. However, the Belgae cavalry fell back, drawing in the Romans until the entire Nervii force broke cover and fell upon them. The Roman cavalry and light infantry broke and ran back across the river to the Roman camp, the Nervii army in hot pursuit. Thus started the Battle of the Sabis River. The Belgae moved from the woods and across the river so fast that the legions had almost no time to prepare.
Smart.
However, their experience and discipline
What's
kicked
Caesar
in.
gonna do?
Rallying to the nearest cohort and legionary standards, they were able to put together a coherent battle line. But as the legionary engineers did not have time to clear the campsite as they usually would, the legions were divided by the hedge-like obstructions laid down by Bodugnatus, which prevented them from forming a cohesive formation.
Okay. Smart by
As a result,
the
the
opposition.
legions were almost fighting 3 separate battles. The 10th and the 9th on the left against the Atrebati, the 11th and 8th in the centre against the Virumandui, and the 12th and 7th on the right against the largest group, the Nervii, with 2 remaining legions still with the baggage train yet to join the battle. The fighting was brutal, with Caesar himself going from group to group, encouraging his men. Eventually, the Roman left was able to push their enemy back enough to hurl their javelins into their ranks and charge. They were able to force the Atrebati back across the river, even making it into the Belgae camp. The Roman centre was also finding success, pushing the Virumandui down to the banks of the river. However, the Roman right was having a hard time. With the centre pushing forwards, the Nervii poured into the gap, almost surrounding the 12th and 7th legions and falling upon the auxiliaries who had retreated to the camp. The remaining auxiliaries, including most of the Roman cavalry who had been marching in front of the baggage train, saw this and fled, assuming the Roman right had been completely destroyed and the battle
No way, they
lost.
completely fled.
They were not without reason. The 12th had lost their standard, their chief centurion, most of the other centurions, and the Romans were beginning to break. Seeing this disaster, Caesar knew he would have to do something or risk losing the whole campaign. Snatching up a shield, he pushed himself to the front line of the legion,
go on,
bolstering the
Caesar.
morale of the men. With the 7th Legion under heavy pressure as well, Caesar ordered them to form a defensive square with the 12th and hold their ground.
Okay, yes, the other legions are coming in.
At this point, the battle began to swing in the Romans' favour. Labienus, in charge of the 10th and 9th legions, saw what was happening from the other side of the river and sent the 10th to relieve the Roman right, while the remaining 2 legions had finally joined the battle and were attacking the Nervii in the Roman camp. The Roman auxiliary cavalry also returned to the battle, seeing this change in fortune, and now it was the Nervii who faced disaster.
There we go.
The Virumandui had fled upon seeing the Roman reinforcements, and the Nervii were now surrounded. They fought bravely, and even Caesar commended them later, but their defeat was now inevitable.
Yeah, it must have been nearly complete.
The Belgae casualties were devastating, Caesar saying that just 500 survived the battle. The Roman losses had also been high, with perhaps as many as 5,000 Romans dead. Without Caesar's personal leadership and the timely interventions of the legions, it is likely that the battle would have been lost, Caesar killed, and the campaign ended. But the battle was over, and Caesar was once again victorious. The Nervii surrendered, becoming a vassal of Rome, and the Atrebati were conquered soon after. Rome was now in control of most of Gaul.
Wow.
New videos on Caesar's campaign in Gaul will be released soon, so make sure you are...
Wow, indeed. What great feats of Caesar indeed. I really enjoyed that. That last battle where he had to get involved. Obviously we had the other 2 Roman legions coming, and we knew that was going to be available, but the fact that he still had to get it there and sort of get in the muck, it was really, really interesting. The first battle as well, like the way they fled and they broke up, I can't believe that happened. I mean, you just can't write history. How did they think that was going to be a good idea? But then I'd imagine that they didn't trust themselves either, so there's a lot to do with it indeed. But I am really enjoying this journey and the content Kings and Genrals is producing. If you guys are enjoying it as well, then like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, but I will catch you in the next video.